Okay, look, I know that there are Lego sets and toys and things like that that say that like that's Gargantos and Doctor Strange too. I knew it when I made that video, but you're never going to convince me that that's not Shu McGrath until I'm sitting in the movie. And Doctor Strange, it's like, oh my God, guys, I just got done fighting Gargantos. He was that one-eyed octopus that threw a bus at me, you know? Like, until we get that moment in the movies, you are never going to convince me that that's not Shu McGrath. Now, in my mind, Shu McGrath makes the most possible sense. It has to be that guy, right? Okay, for those of you guys who don't know anything about Shu McGrath, you know, let's break this down like a fraction. For those of you guys who don't know anything about Shu McGrath, I got a great big huge long video over at Comics Explained that explains the whole history of Shu McGrath, but here's the abridged version, right? So way back before mankind existed on Earth, like we're talking like billions of years, the very early days of Earth, you had what were called like the Great Old Ones or the Elder Gods or different like that. They've been known as different names, right? The gods of chaos or like the beings of sorrow or whatever it is. They have all kinds of different names. The reason why they have those really dark names is because they turned Earth into a hellish landscape. So you had all kinds of these beings out there. At the very top, you had two guys. You had Chthon and you had Shu McGrath. Now, in terms of how they got here, we don't really know. We simply just know that they were here. It's largely assumed that either they came from like some extra dimensional space, that the things that Shu McGrath has said over the course of his existence are actually true, that he predates reality itself, and that he basically showed up in this universe or showed up in the main Marvel universe in Marvel Comics after its creation and then occupied Earth for whatever reason. We're not really given anything as far back as where this guy came from. We simply just know that they were there. And what they would do is they would feed on what was basically early man, right? And when I say early man, I mean like ape man, right? Primate man, right? So when humans first began walking upright and then eventually turned into like beings, you know, human beings as we know them now, they were being fed on by these guys. Now, the reason why they left Earth are actually wide and varying. There's all kinds of reasons why that happened. When it comes to like Chthon and those guys, they were basically defeated by Atum, who went on to become the Demigorge. He was originally the Demiurge. Basically, he ate them. Is essentially what it is. And the ones that didn't get eaten fled off to alternate realities, right? They just literally just ran off to alternate universes. That's the nature of Chthon. That's why Chthon is always trying to find a way back to Earth in the main Marvel universe, and he usually uses the Scarlet Witch to do it, right? She has like a portion of his power, which comes in the form of chaos magic. Somebody like Shu McGrath was actually defeated by a guy named Siznek. Now, Siznek was basically this time-traveling sorcerer from the future, but he was traveling into the past and then making these little stops along the way to either destroy or absorb the magical energies of various beings that he met in order to amplify his own power so that at the beginning of all creation, he could recreate reality, which he did. He actually succeeded in doing that for a time and then eventually was defeated. But Shu McGrath was one of those guys that he defeated. But the reason why Shu McGrath is so significant here, and really just in terms of what he's capable of, he, like most people out there, like most of those demonic beings, Chthon, Sidorak, those guys, he exists in his own dimension. The reason why this is important is because much like those guys, in his home dimension, he's all powerful and he is a multiversal force. So what does that mean? Okay, so in Marvel Comics, and again, the Marvel Cinematic Universe does their own thing. So we kind of have to adapt these concepts from Marvel Comics loosely because the MCU can change it at any point in time. But in Marvel Comics, you've got like planetary threats, right? I mean, in the grand scheme of things, these guys don't matter, right? You got like Iceman, you got Storm, you got a few people like that, you know, so on and so forth, the Incredible Hulk, whatever. And then you have like universe level threats. Now there is a kind of hierarchy among beings who are universal threats. We're just gonna lump them all together, right? These are your Dormammus, Thanos with the Infinity Gauntlet, Mephisto, these are your cosmic entities, the Celestials, Galactus, Franklin Richards, Matthew Malloy, just things along those lines, right? Just really, really capable guys. Somebody like Gabriel Shepard is kind of an example, but these are guys that are like really, really powerful and are a credible threat to the universe itself. And then you have multiversal threats. These are guys who are a credible threat to the entirety of the multiverse. These are your Shu McGraths, these are your Dark Phoenixes, right? Or like somebody with the White Phoenix of the crown. This is like the Molecule Man, Owen Reese, the Marquis of Death, King Hyperion, kind of, the Century's evil alter ego, the Void, Protege is another really good example. These guys are powerful, right? They are credible threats. Now, one thing to know, just because a person is a credible threat to the multiverse doesn't mean they could completely wipe out an entire universe. I mean, most of these guys can't, right? Thanos with the Astral Regulator, Thanos with the Heart of the Universe, these guys could wipe out all of creation. And in fact, Thanos ended the multiverse when he had the Heart of the Universe. It was crazy, but these guys are that powerful. Shu McGrath Shuma-Gorath is on that level. That Shuma-Gorath's significance in the main Marvel Universe and Marvel Comics is that Doctor Strange tried to stop him from coming into the main Marvel Universe through the mind of the Ancient One, and that while there was essentially a psychic battle, Doctor Strange couldn't win. The only way to stop Shuma-Gorath from coming through was to close the portal. The only way to do that was to kill the Ancient One. So Stephen Strange had to kill the Ancient One in order to stop Shuma-Gorath from showing up in the main Marvel Universe, and that's how Stephen Strange officially became the Sorcerer Supreme in Marvel Comics. But there are multiple universes out there that Shuma-Gorath has completely and totally subjugated. Every single person that exists in that universe is faithful, loyal to Shuma-Gorath, usually because of the fact that he uses magic, or he like takes over their minds, or he just inflicts so much insane chaos and destruction that people feel they have no choice but to basically bend the knee to him. But this is a guy who's gone into universes and killed those universes' versions of like Galactus and different things along those lines. This guy's on a whole different level, right? I mean, that's the thing to keep in mind. Throughout the entirety of the multiverse, there's one Shuma-Gorath, right? Every universe has its own version of Dormammu, right? I mean, he's cool, and I mean, he's got powers, but in the grand scheme of things, Dormammu's a kid with a pop gun compared to Shuma-Gorath. So he's very, 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 very powerful. Now, do I think that Shuma-Gorath would serve as something like the main villain in Doctor Strange 2? It's possible. One of the things you guys mentioned in the comments of the last video that we did, right, the video about the Doctor Strange 2 trailer breakdown, all that kind of stuff, is that version of Stephen Strange could be a version that is wholly possessed by Shuma-Gorath, right? He's like the living, walking, talking embodiment of Shuma-Gorath. That's entirely possible, right? Or he's operating as an agent of Shuma-Gorath. That's possible too, right? He's been subjugated and taken. One of the things to know is that in the comics, there's been multiple times when Shuma-Gorath has basically told Doctor Strange, like, ally yourself with me and I will give you power untold, right? Stephen Strange is smart enough not to do it, but in some alternate reality somewhere, yeah, some poor sap who just became the Sorcerer Supreme, wouldn't be too hard to basically trick that guy, especially if he has no idea what he's doing. That's how Doctor Strange became a disciple of Dormammu in the What If stories. What If Volume 1, issue number 18? That's when that happened, right? He was tricked by Dormammu because he didn't really know any better. So it's one of those things that's really, really interesting here. But Shuma-Gorath poses a far more credible threat. Now, do I think that a battle between Shuma-Gorath and Doctor Strange 2 would come down to a battle in the streets with Shuma-Gorath throwing a bus at it and Doctor Strange cutting it in half? Probably not, but it did in the Mighty Avengers. So here's the thing. So Marvel Comics, they have all kinds of Avengers comics, right? You got like the main Avengers comic, then you got New Avengers, and you got Mighty Avengers and all that kind of stuff. Mighty Avengers is the version of the team, at least the second iteration, was the one that Luke Cage led. That's the one that had Spectrum, Monica Rambeau, Adam Brashear, the Blue Marvel, so on and so forth, right? This was just a really, really cool comic. There was one point where Shuma-Gorath showed up because Doctor Strange had been tricked into summoning Shuma-Gorath by the Ebony Maw. It took place during the Infinity storyline when you first were introduced to like Thanos and like the Cole Obsidian and those guys. Like the Ebony Maw basically talked Doctor Strange, because that was kind of his power. He could like talk you into doing things you didn't want to do, but he convinced Doctor Strange to unleash Shuma-Gorath, really resurrect him, and then unleash Shuma-Gorath. But that's the thing. Whenever Shuma-Gorath shows up on Earth, you only ever see a small, tiny, itty-bitty bit of his power. You never see Shuma-Gorath at full power. In his own dimension, he's unstoppable. And again, most of those demonic entities are Sidorak and Dormammu and those guys. They really cannot be defeated in their own realm because they've got total control and mastery of their own realm. And so when Shuma-Gorath showed up on Earth in the Mighty Avengers story, there's a tiny little bit of his power, right? And it was also written in such a way to where it was basically heroes that didn't have magical abilities defeating it, right? That's why Adam Brashear just flew through his head. Literally just blasted right through the head of Shuma-Gorath. It was still impressive, right? But Shuma-Gorath, if he were to show up at full strength, he would decimate all. Nobody would have a chance. Like no one. And when I say no one, I mean like no one, right? Cosmic entities, magic wielders, none of those guys, right? He would subjugate the whole thing. I mean, sure, Scarlet Witch, House of M level power, sure, right? She would take him out, right? But aside from that, like he would decimate all. And I think having a character like that in Doctor Strange 2 makes the most sense because it gives you gravity, right? And it also gives you context. If the multiverse is really breaking down, if the multiverse is really falling apart, then it would sound more credible that beings like Shuma-Gorath did escape confinement, right? That like he's trying to conquer the Marvel Cinematic Universe, trying to conquer Earth. Again, it begs the question, why would it boil down to a fight in the streets between him and Doctor Strange? But it's also one of those things where we don't have the full context of the scene. Maybe it's one of those things where it's like the Matrix 3 fight scene between like Neo and like Agent Smith, like Prime Smith, and like all the other Smiths are standing around watching, and it's something like that, right? They're just surrounded by people who have been subjugated by Shuma-Gorath. That's possible. Maybe it's a more toned and stripped down version of Shuma-Gorath, right? Where it's not the one we know, where he has astronomical levels of power. He's just an extra dimensional being who got into the main Marvel universe or Marvel Cinematic Universe because basically reality's breaking down, and that's really it. That's really all you get, right? He's not like this multiversal, hell-raising demigod who's conquered entire realities, right? It's not anything along those lines. That's possible too. But I think that having some sort of multiversal, extra-dimensional being who shows up and then attaching the name Shuma-Gorath to it is huge, because it shows the significance of the threat, that like it would take someone like Doctor Strange to beat that guy. Shuma-Gorath is not an Avengers level threat. I don't care what Mighty Avengers did, right? This guy's not an Avenger, he's way beyond that, so he's not some easily defeatable foe. But I think that having this here, right, having him be Shuma-Gorath is far more reasonable than a one-eyed octopus from the oh my God, guys, the multiverse is falling apart and Doctor Strange too. All right, everybody. How do we best illustrate the collapse of the multiverse in the opening sequence of the film? I know, Kevin Feige, let's have a one-eyed octopus from the Atlantic Ocean that comes from Atlantis. Let's have it attack the surface world and Doctor Strange defeats it. Genius! I'm sorry, I can't get behind that, right? I cannot in good conscience get behind that. It's gotta be Shuma-Gorath. Maybe it's not, but I feel like it is. With that being said, guys, we're gonna bring this to an end. Thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you all later. Peace.